You're late.
A wizard is never late, Frodo Baggins. Nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to.
Hello. I'm back from my self-imposed exile, at least kind of half back, to talk about something that I didn't think was going to be my first video of the year. Happy New Year, by the way. It's 2025. Officially the year that Black Ops 2 becomes a history game.
Hey, kid. Come on.
So, today we are talking about the absolute calamity, in fact, the various calamities that have occurred since I've been in my self-imposed exile, since I've been in a pit in the middle of wherever it was in The Dark Knight Rises. Safe to say that Halo Studios, and more so, as always, Microsoft, have not been playing very nice recently.
They don't stop coming and 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 they don't stop coming.
And today we have a lot to talk about pertaining to that. And you know, let's waste no time and jump in with the first thing, which I'm sure you've all heard about, the 90 gigabyte DigSite leak. So, at the end of last year, if you somehow haven't heard, the biggest Halo leak in the history of the franchise occurred, containing 90 gigabytes of tons of DigSite related content, so mostly stuff from old Halo games, from Bungie Halo games. Included within this leak that was posted to 4chan were the E3 2000 build of Halo 1, the literal E3 2000 build, mind you, along with a ton of other very early Common Evolved builds, Halo 2's Alpha build, Guardian Forest and Forerunner City from Halo 3, a January 2009 Reach build in Halo 3's menu, and even, this sounds insane, this sounds ridiculous, it sounds like I'm reciting a Wendigoon video, even a manifesto was included in the leak. Yep, that was a manifesto. It was themed and I'm sorry, I can't, the entire thing is just like, it's kind of surreal. So the manifesto was themed around the intro to Deus Ex, the original one, which unfortunately I've never played. Yes, I know I'm committing a sacrilege right there, but I've never played it, but I do know about this intro, and this manifesto was a Halo modding themed version of that intro, which was certainly something. Now, I was really excited to break down all of the stuff in this leak. It's definitely unfortunate that it happened for a litany of reasons that we'll get to later, but I was really excited to dive into this leak and go through all of these, Guardian Forest, man, Forerunner City, E3 2000. There were so many cool builds and cool things in this leak that I was going to be making videos about this year. And I can't, because Microsoft have basically just said no to the entire thing. Now, before we touch on this, I do just want to say briefly that we don't know right now who leaked these files, but we know for an absolute fact that it wasn't any member of the DigSite team, because they literally didn't have access to these files. They physically could not leak this stuff. Who did it? We have no idea right now, whether it's like a disgruntled employee or some external thing, who knows, right? We don't know. We just know that it wasn't the DigSite team because it literally physically could not have been them. So, Microsoft, good old friends up top, Microsoft, what are they responding to the leaks with? Well, strikes and DMCA takedowns. Now, I will say, just as a little caveat here, they are well within their rights to be doing this. At the end of the day, this is content that shouldn't have been released, that has been released inadvertently, and so they're well within their legal rights to issue strikes and takedowns on this content, right? I actually don't entirely disagree with that. However, it's the extent to which they've gone with pursuing these strikes and desists and stuff like that that I do disagree with. So let's get to it. So Unseen Halo, who if you don't know, is a YouTuber who covers like cut content and some modding stuff and other stuff like that, really cool guy. He posted a video going through, I believe it was Guardian Forest, right? And that video didn't just get taken down by YouTube. It didn't just get taken down. Microsoft even issued a strike to his channel. Now, for those who maybe aren't creators or don't know much about the way that YouTube works, if they issue a copyright claim, like they did at first, all that happens is you can't monetize the video and it might get forced to be private and not viewable. If you issue a copyright strike for a video, the monetization gets removed from someone's channel, the uploader's channel, for I think it's 6 months. So Unseen Halo is not a full-time YouTuber, so I don't think is that affected by this, but if that happened to someone like me or MintBlitz or any other full-time YouTuber who's not even in the Halo sphere, then it would have been catastrophic. And again, I'm going to say again, yes, Microsoft were within their legal rights to do this. They're not breaking the law by doing this. It's their IP, their assets, they can do this. And I do actually agree with copyright claiming this leak, because there are certain elements of the leak that could be dangerous if they got out in terms of like reverse engineering the engine and stuff. But I think copyright striking just a very harmless video going through the leak, and not just going through like anything in the leak, going through one of the things in the leak that we have like been fascinated with, Guardian Forest, man. That level is probably the most iconic cut Halo level of all time, on par with Halo 2's 4 in a Tank. And we finally got our eyes on it, right? And we could go through it. And for that to be the video they strike, it doesn't really sit right with me. Luckily, as far as we're aware, Unseen Halo was the only person to receive a strike. I think it was basically Microsoft firing a warning shot, essentially, and being like, right, anybody else who covers this is what you're gonna get. So obviously, I will not be covering the leak in anywhere near as much detail as I wish I could have done, and I had hoped to, which sucks, but it is what it is. Another thing, though, is that Marty O'Donnell's Discord, which is like a public Discord where there's like loads of people that aren't him talking in it, who were talking about the leak and obviously clearly sharing the files of the leak. His Discord got issued with a cease and desist by Microsoft. Now, again, absolutely within their legal right to do this. I'm not saying they're breaking the law, but again, I don't know. I kind of understand it if they're sharing the files for the leak, but I think cease and desisting an entire Discord server, not the best look, especially with the hot water that Microsoft are already in pertaining to Halo specifically at the moment. Not that they really care, because they're a $1 trillion corporation and literally the biggest corporation in human history, at least for the past 300 years. But still not the greatest move. Now, what's interesting is that this leak pertaining to DigSite assets comes very shortly after the DigSite team essentially imploded. Loads of the major members of the DigSite team left, partially in protest against Halo Studios and Microsoft, right around Christmas. My brain was kind of a mess at that point, for reasons that you guys are probably aware, so I don't remember the exact date, but they left the DigSite team, and then this leak happened shortly after. I'm going to reiterate it, like I said at the start, this can't have been any member of the DigSite team because they physically didn't have access to these files, but the fact that this leak happened around the same time, weird to say the least. And so I spoke to the DigSite team, at least some members of the DigSite team, about their experience with the DigSite team and with working with Halo Studios and Microsoft, and about what went wrong with the DigSite team and why they left, and also about kind of the philosophy of Halo Studios and Microsoft in general. And I've got some really interesting stuff to share that they have given to me, like, personally, that is not like through a game of telephone and has been translated loads of times. This is directly from them. I've paraphrased some of it, but let's go through it. So I asked them a bunch of questions, and the first question was, why did you quit the DigSite team? A prevalent issue that you're going to see throughout all of these questions that I asked them is that basically they can't justify working on anything beyond Halo 1 in an unpaid manner, because Halo 1 is rather easy to work with, but anything, especially Halo 3 onwards, is a whole different ballgame. Like, they can't justify working on that and not being paid because of the amount of work. To quote one of them specifically, they said that it's a commitment that requires multiple people firing on all cylinders. One of the things that was really just reiterated to me was that it being an unpaid gig only worked up until like Halo 3 onwards content, and past that point, it just wasn't going to work out. However, I was also told that Halo Studios leadership showed a complete disregard for the work that they put into projects like, for example, Halo 2 E3 and Alpha Moon, classifying what they did as, quote, not real work, while simultaneously flaunting those projects' success on the studio's end back to the people that worked on them. They said that money definitely would have been nice, but the main thing that made them leave was Halo Studios' treatment of the community, which they said was antithetical to the way that they want to make things. And this is supported by another person I spoke to who said that Halo 2 E3 and Alpha Moon were so successful that it even attracted the attention of upper Microsoft management and got them a meeting with Halo Studios upper management, who said that their work had, quote, built a brand of immense value, but that it, quote, wasn't real enough to lead to any meaningful support or compensation to allow them to continue working, whilst at the same time asking the DigSite guys to replicate Halo 2 E3's impact with brand new projects in the later Halo games. Apparently the Digsite team proposed to continue their work either in the form of restorative work, like they've been doing so far, or in entirely new content for MCC, from things like cosmetics to even additions to classic Halo campaigns like expansions and the like, but this was also dismissed. And so, combined with the recent whole debacle with Forgers not being paid despite their contributions to Halo Infinite, they quit because of a severe philosophical disagreement with Halo Studios leadership. The next question I asked them was, how were you treated by Halo Studios? And the answers are rather interesting. So everybody that I spoke to said that literally across the board, every single person that they worked with directly at Halo Studios was really, really good, really helpful, really supportive, great to work with, no issues at all. The problems came from anything that they needed that kind of went above their place in the hierarchical ladder. So for example, if they needed certain fixes to MCC or certain new tools or something like that, that the people that they were working directly with simply didn't have the power to do, it went above them on the ladder and it was just essentially shot down. Halo Studios were apparently mostly hands-off, which was both good and bad. It was good because it meant that there wasn't really much rush or pressure and no real hard deadlines were ever set by the studio, which is good considering they weren't being paid. They only ever kind of suggested rough release windows so they could tie the releases in with media cycles. However, with them being so hands-off, this often led to a lack of direction and also a lot of self-imposed crunch as a consequence. I was told to basically emphasize this, the crunch was not enforced by Halo Studios or 343, it was always self-imposed, it was just them doing it to themselves. An example they gave was that for the showing of Halo 2 E3 at Halo Worlds last year, they had no idea what capacity the Halo 2 E3 build and also Alpha Moon was going to be shown off until literally the morning of the show. Like, they didn't know if it was just going to be shown on stage or if it was going to be playable on all the PCs at the event. They had no idea. And then this all came to a head when they were told that Halo Studios leadership wanted to have a meeting with them after the extreme success of the Halo 2 E3 playable demo. They weren't told what the meeting was going to be about, but given the kind of layup they were given of Halo Studios saying that Halo 2 E3 did so well that it was going to be about paid work for Reach. However, the leadership didn't propose anything like that, nor did they even offer any form of paid contract work. And then, I quote, "They very plainly want wins without putting the groundwork down, and that includes continued support of MCC or paying Forgers for max." They said that they were more than happy to use Digsite content for MCC marketing on social media, but at the same time, they refused to view the Digsite developers under the same light as, quote, real developers. My next question was, when you signed on to do Digsite, what was expected of you by Halo Studios? Some of them said that nothing really direct was asked of them. It was just like Halo Studios would kind of nudge them in a certain direction for the kind of content they should be restoring or creating, and kind of half-imposed soft deadlines based on the Waypoint articles that they'd release around the same time as a Digsite release. By the sounds of it, the only hard deadline that was ever imposed on them by Halo Studios was to release the tags for, I'm assuming, Halo 1 Digsite content with the release of the editing kit. But despite the deadline still being soft, they were heavily hinted that certain releases had to come at a certain time. Apparently at one point, they wanted them to release the Halo 2 E3 demo during HCS Worlds when they first showed it off, when it absolutely wasn't ready to be released. Obviously that didn't happen. They released it 3 weeks later, 2 weeks later, I think. So it worked out in the end. Now this one's interesting. The fourth question I asked them was, did you have any long-term expectations for Digsite? So things like pay or extra tools or MCC support and bug fixes, etc. So one of the broad things is that when they signed on for it, at no point did any of them expect to be paid or anything, but they hoped that down the line somewhere there might be some kind of compensation or potential contract work. Although some of them hoped that it would lead to a career path at some point down the line, they were even willing to stay on after this whole debacle just to do little bits of work on stuff that they were interested in, but obviously that's not happened. Some of them even said that they accepted when they signed on that they would probably lose money doing Digsite, but they signed on anyway. But beyond that, some of them even said that even a few of their kind of base level expectations weren't met. One of the examples of this being having access to assets or even game updates that would help them with their work that they hoped they would get thanks to them signing on to do this thing. Apparently when they signed on, it was kind of suggested to them internally that Digsite is going to serve as a vessel for both sustained activity on the Master Chief Collection and at some point potentially paid work down the line, and obviously neither of those things came to be. Another one of the complaints as well was that given the fact that they were working on MCC actively, they had really hoped that this would lead to more MCC bug fixes or maybe a few more tools here and there that they needed to work on it, which again didn't happen. The reason I asked this question, by the way, is because a lot of people seem to zone in on them not being paid for their work, and although that was one of the main criticisms, it wasn't the only main criticism. The other one was the fact that they'd hoped that this would lead to them getting bug fixes for MCC, and that never happened. They were happy to have the Digsite team work on MCC and make all this content for it, but at the same time, no bug fixes were ever made. They also at one point really hoped that the Halo 2 E3 demo would be playable on Xbox, even if that was just an exception to the rule of no mods being playable on Xbox. They really hoped that that was going to be the one to be playable, but of course now that MCC development is essentially dead, as they put it, that's not going to happen. And the final question I asked was, what could Halo Studios and or Microsoft have done to have kept you on? And I'll be honest, one of the main answers was pay or compensation, because at the end of the day, Digsite work was very intensive and very time consuming, and it was eating into time that they could have been spending on other endeavors, like a career or like other creative work that potentially would have been paid, when this obviously wasn't. They did say again that yes, it was a volunteer project, they signed on with the assumption of not getting paid, but as they went through the games and they got to more complex games like Halo 3, doing that for free on a volunteer basis started to get much more unrealistic, and Halo Studios' just refusal to pay them anything for this was a bit of a blocker. Other things they said were like more resources and bug fixes to MCC to make the work actually easier, but then another thing was just to like show them more respect and treat them better, because they did a lot of work for the team and didn't really get anything in return. One of them even said that it was actually fine that they couldn't provide more resources or bug fixes and that stuff. It was more so just the way that that information was relayed to the team that they considered like personally insulting and not done in the most tasteful manner. So that is pretty much straight from the horse's mouth. There's no mistranslation with any of that info. That's just me paraphrasing a load of stuff that I was told. This entire situation is very unfortunate because Digsite content has been the absolute peak of Halo content in the last, 3.5 years now. It's been the main content that has kept us afloat during the last couple rough years, should we say. It's been probably actually, in terms of new Halo content, it's been my absolute favorite thing to cover. I mean, dude, playing Halo 2 E3, actually playing that, and Alpha Moon, and Crash Site, words don't describe the surrealism that came from that. And to have that endeavor end in such a sour way, I think really sucks. It sucks for everyone involved. I really hope that some kind of solution can be dug up from the mess of this situation and can be enacted that can help Digsite content to continue, but I don't know. Unfortunately, I don't really see that happening, which sucks because it was such a unique and cool endeavor. Like, I genuinely don't think I've ever seen any other franchise do something like this. Like, have the fan modders dive into old archive content and resurrect stuff that people thought was mythical, right? Like, I don't think that's ever happened for any other probably has done, but I've never seen it happen for any other franchise. And so this was a truly, purely intentioned thing, and for it to end like this, I think it really sucks. Now, something I do want to know is that one of the Digsite members, when this all broke down, the tweet has been deleted now, but he said that basically when because some people were immediately attacking Halo Studios and putting all the blame on them, some of them were immediately attacking Microsoft and shifting all the blame to them, and in reality he was saying, look, at the end of the day, Halo Studios, at least the upper leadership, and Microsoft are essentially the same thing, right? Like, they aren't two separate entities, they're essentially the same interconnected being, right? So when people have stuff like this, when people see stuff like this, they immediately want to blame one party and kind of exonerate the other, and I don't think it's that simple. So just keep that in mind. Like, don't just pin all the blame on one side or the other, right? Like, at the end of the day, the two are way more interconnected than I think most people realize. So, after leaving the Digsite team, a load of the members are now working on their own projects, and I really want to shout some of them out here because not only are they insanely cool, but they also deserve our support after all the work they poured into Digsite with very little to nothing in return. So links to support individual people can be found in the description, but I also want to shout out some specific projects, starting out with Aerial Vanguard Hummingbird. So like the others that I'm going to talk about, this project is being worked on by a number of ex-Digsite members. It's a really aesthetic kind of Y2K styled mecha FPS that's taken inspiration from Halo, Tribes, Gundam, and loads of other manga and anime sources as well. As you can see in the CRT shot in particular, it looks really sick. They're in need right now of more programmers and gameplay designers, and if you want to help them and join the team, then DM Sean T on Twitter, link in the description. Then there's Xenotomb, which again is being worked on by a number of ex-Digsite members. It's a Doom 3 styled kind of sci-fi / horror action game that's inspired by Marathon, System Shock, Resident Evil, Prey 2017, among many other sick games as well. Its link to his Twitter can be found in the description. And then there's Glue, which is something a little bit more light-hearted. It's an arcade action-adventure game that blends the puzzle elements of old Xbox Live arcade games like N+, which was a real household name back in the day, with OG kind of collectathon games like LEGO Star Wars, for example. Much more lighthearted, really cool soundtrack done by Neo, who's a really talented guy. Again, link in the description, along with links to support all the members individually as well. And on the topic of like fans and creators being, I don't want to use the term mistreated because that seems way too dramatic, but like not being treated the way they should be by leadership and Microsoft, there are a few things that people noted around this time as well, a few stories people had from experiences with leadership and run-ins with Microsoft. Do bear in mind that I believe both of these things were with the old 343 leadership and not the current one, so just bear that in mind. But Unicraken, who was one of the lead devs on Sins of the Prophets, which was a fantastic space RTS mod for Sins of a Solar Empire, which I really should have made a video on over here. It's really cool. Either way, him and his team did some great work on that, and when some of their ship models that they made from scratch were used in the encyclopedia that they gave to 343 to use for free, they didn't even get sent copies of the encyclopedia. The team that made those models and donated them for free still had to go out and buy copies of the encyclopedia, which to me just seems like, you know, like, you're a $1 trillion corporation. You can afford to spend like $500 buying like 15 copies of the encyclopedia and shipping them out to people that made something that is literally in that book, right? That really doesn't sit right with me, I'll be honest. And then the other one was Grunt.api, who, okay, I'm going to be honest, when it comes to anything API or generally coding related, I am the smoothest of smooth brains. Like, the extent of my coding knowledge was writing a batch file at school to make the disk tray open and close constantly. That was as far as I could go. So this stuff, I may get some of it wrong, I may speak about some things incorrectly, just bear that in mind. But Grunt.api basically created tools with Halo's existing API. Like, for example, he created the first public file browser when Halo Infinite didn't have one. He created stat tracking websites and the like. And at one point, Microsoft even gave him the green light to collaborate with 343 and assumedly help them bolster Waypoint stat tracking or create a better version of Waypoint, something like that, right? And Microsoft gave him the go-ahead, and again, old 343 leadership, not current Halo Studios one, that old leadership issued him with a cease and desist, right? Which is basically the legal way of saying stop or we'll pursue further legal action, which normally means suing or something like that, right? Which I think is excessive to say that he was creating tools that should have launched with the game and didn't, and that he was making before them himself, and they ceased and desisted him for that, which is insane. Don't want to dwell on that for too long, because it was old leadership, happened a while ago, but at the same time, just two little things there that really rub you the wrong way. That and also the issuing of strikes for talking about the leaked stuff. Again, I get it, but at the same time, I think it's way too overkill. And you know, on the topic of Microsoft, this is a bit of a tangent, but it's something that broke recently that I need to talk about briefly. So the show Secret Level on Prime Video, which is basically done by Blur, guys behind Halo 2 Anniversary and Halo Wars 2's cutscenes and original Halo Wars as well. They created a show that was like an anthology series of shorts from a bunch of different games and IPs. Like, for example, there was one with like Helldivers in, there was a Space Marine one in Season 1 of Secret Level. Really cool idea for a show, done by Tim Miller, actually, the director of Deadpool 1, 2, and 3. Apparently Tim Miller and, I'm sorry, the other director whose name I'm forgetting, I'm so sorry, they wrote for Season 1 of Secret Level a script for a Master Chief and Doomslayer crossover episode. So yes, a Chief and Doomslayer episode, and they presented it to Microsoft as an idea for Season 1. Like, hey, wouldn't it be really cool if we got these two badass super soldiers in green power armor to fight together? And you know what Microsoft said? Nah. They just said nah. N-A-H. Nah. Thanks, Microsoft. I'm happy that you said no to that, but you said yes to Master Chief getting his ass cheeks out. Great, I love this timeline. Okay, now I want to briefly talk about something that some of the DIGSite members brought up and that has also been a bit of a hot topic in the community recently, and it's something that I've seen from the outskirts, and I want to give my 2 cents on it, and that is forgers being paid for their maps. Now, the whole thing is that basically last year, besides the one dev-made level, Illusion, and the MA5K, almost, if not every other piece of content that was added, and I mean actual content, not cosmetic nonsense, actual playable content that was added to Infinite was made by forgers, right? And you look at what's happening with Fortnite, for example, where people using the Unreal Engine Fortnite creator mode, their version of Forge, are getting paid handsomely for it. In the past as well, I'm pretty sure when Counter-Strike do skin contests, when people submit their skins, I'm 95% sure they get paid for that as well, right? Community contributions to games that generate the developers and the publishers money, well, the people that create them also get a slice of the pie, which is fair, it's good, it's how it should work. But forgers don't get paid if they get a map in matchmaking. Forge has changed a lot in recent years, especially with Halo Infinite, right? Back in the day in Halo 3, Forge was just a tool where you drop barrels on people or you smack people around the head with roadblocks, right? That was basically all it was. You obviously could make maps with it, but it was nothing even slightly compared to what you can do with, specifically, Infinite's Forge. And so it's a very specific tool set that you have to learn to be able to use it. You can't just jump in and make anything. I can't make anything in Infinite Forge because, frankly, my brain is too smooth. And so 343 or Halo Studios keep asking for very specific content to be made in Forge for them to put in matchmaking, which of course brings people to the game and gets them to spend in the store and generate the money. But at the same time, they're asking people to make really complex things with these tools that they can put in matchmaking and profit of, whilst not paying them at all for it, whilst at the same time paying an external studio called Sperasoft to make maps in Forge that go into matchmaking. So community members are making maps and modes in Forge per Halo Studios requests that are going into matchmaking and not getting paid for it, and meanwhile, there's an external studio getting paid to make stuff, going in matchmaking alongside the community members' maps who are getting paid for it. That doesn't really line up, especially when you consider the fact that, like I said, Fortnite creators are getting paid literally millions of dollars for their maps in their version of the customs browser, right? So that to me really doesn't line up. Even ex-Halo Studios members agree with this, that they should be getting paid for their work. So I think, honestly, they absolutely should be. I think that if you make a map that gets into matchmaking, there should be some kind of financial compensation or something to reward you for doing that, for the time and the effort that you invest into the maps and the modes, because it's so time consuming. And the stuff that people are making in Infinite is flabbergasting. I mean, I've covered quite a lot of it on the channel, and I'm going to continue to cover it because it's insane. Some of the stuff people are making is like turbo brain stuff, and for that to get added to matchmaking, especially when it's made per 343's very specific requests, and not to get paid for it, just doesn't line up for me. So I think I'm going to round this video out there. It's a bit of a messy one. I wanted to cover a bunch of stuff that I'd missed whilst I was in my self-imposed exile, which I'm going back into now, by the way, for a little bit. I just wanted to get this video out earlier than, you know, I was going to be late. I knew I was going to be late, but I didn't want to be too late, so hopefully I wasn't too late to this entire topic. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. My next video is going to be talking about my predictions for Halo in 2025. Interesting because my predictions from last year were actually really accurate, so I'm not going to say I'm an oracle or anything, but I might be an oracle. So thank you all for watching. I really appreciate it. Thank you, by the way, for all the support on the last video in particular. I literally read every comment, and it means a lot. You guys are awesome. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Happy New Year as well. Happy 2025. Black Ops 2 year. Cue the adrenaline. And with that said, let's round this video out there. I want to give a huge thank you to all of my amazing patrons for the continued support over there as per usual. Thank you all so much, and thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to check out all the DIGSite guys' links down below in the comments and go and support them on their next endeavors. They absolutely deserve it. They absolutely unequivocally do. Links in the description. So thank you once again for watching, my friends. Happy New Year, and I'll catch you all in the next one.